Welcome everyone back to another BOLDcast discussion here on the BOLDcast One Piece channel. I'm Carson.
I'm Lindsay.
And this is our discussion for the One Piece live action Netflix special show, season 1. If you're new to our sort of community, we do these kinds of things, or at least we try to, every season or every arc of a longer show. And we just go in and try to talk about what we thought about it, theories and speculation, or predictions, or just,
or like
just a review.
Criticisms if it was something that maybe we weren't too fond of, which isn't the case with this show, but some other stuff we like to kind of take a deeper dive and like explore the thing as a whole rather than like the episode by episode review that you get from the reactions.
Yeah, so stuff like this allows us to, well, it hasn't really affected us very much, but the idea with doing these was that we would be able to, not worry about saying everything each episode or like giving a whole review each episode, because originally we would go crazy in depth with every episode, even though there wasn't really much going on, just because we felt like we had to say stuff to justify like the video, but and to like give a review and like be critical and stuff like that. But with these, it allows us to kind of, if there's something that's not really that important, or that,
or just that we missed, because sometimes stuff gets missed, or like if our opinions change on something as you watch it in the show and you're like, oh, I really liked that, and then like later you're like, oh, maybe not so much, or you didn't like something and then it grew on you later. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of a reflection. After you've seen the full context.
Yeah, and we have a couple more of these if you want to see them for other shows we've done. We did them for Jujutsu Kaisen; those are really popular. We did one for Chainsaw Man. We did one for Haikyuu. Did a couple for Naruto. Yeah, a bunch for Hunter x Hunter. And those are on our main channel if you want to check those out. You can also check out our Patreon if you want to see our One Piece anime reactions. Those should be starting on Patreon by the time you see these, and they'll be coming to YouTube very soon. And I guess we could just get right into it. Is there a question you wanted to start us off with? We asked our patrons. We opened it up to all of our patrons. Usually we would make like a community post on our channel, like asking people what they wanted us to talk about, but we figured we'd just hand it off to just our patrons. So if you want to stay tuned, or if you want to be a patron, check out, or if you want to be featured in the next discussion whenever we finish the first arc of the anime, then because we'll be doing these with each arc of the anime as it goes along, then we'll be asking our patrons, when we finish watching it, and we'll record these before we move on to the next section. So we asked our patrons, and is there a question?
Yeah. We have a question from Cameron Burnside, who says, how closely did the live action align with your expectation? I don't mean in terms of overall quality, but rather in terms of tone, characters, subject matter, the world, etc. Were you expecting anything different going in?
Were you expecting anything different going in?
I mean, I feel like...
Talk into your microphone.
Sorry.
Move your microphone so you can talk into it.
I feel like the tone of the show, and I'm not sure if this was a live action thing or if this is something that will carry over into the anime, I felt like there was a little bit kind of darker of a tone than I was maybe anticipating.
Yeah,
I felt like even with Luffy's character, just the kind of like creepy or like slightly deranged like feeling that you get from him when you're watching, and he's saying all these like very typical anime protagonist things that are like, oh, yeah, don't talk shit about my friends or whatever, but it's like kind of menacing.
Yeah.
Like you feel like he's really gonna follow through and like just absolutely beat this person half to death if they are disrespectful. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that was something that I wasn't really expecting, and like a vibe that I never got from like the OPs or anything while we were watching. Yeah,
same. It's weird because like with the shonen protagonist template, like I guess the knee-jerk reaction is to think of them like a Superman type figure, or that they're just like this pinnacle of justice and friendship and stuff like that. But like I think the thing about like when you examine like Goku, or now like our impression of Luffy, is like there's always a little bit more of an edge to like shonen protagonists. Like there's like, I'd say Naruto is like even more of a goody two shoes type guy. As the story goes along, he's way more like sort of one dimensional in the sense of just wanting justice and wanting things to be good and not wanting to kill or whatever. Goku, like the reason I bring up Goku is just like Goku is like the progenitor, like the most classic sort of shonen protagonist, other than like Jonathan Joestar, similar time as Dragon Ball. But like it's I'm always, I guess I'm bringing it up because I'm always surprised when we see that like edge in a shonen protagonist, where when we talk about like how Gon is like just kind of like detached from reality and or detached from morality, I guess, and Luffy seems to have a similar sort of adventure and, you know, freedom over like he seems to be a very moral guy, but he
to his own set.
It's not as simple,
yeah.
you know. So I do appreciate that kind of edge to it, I guess, is what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. There's some other similarities with Goku as there are with all like basic not basic, but like, you know, standard shonen protagonist main character type guys.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, sorry.
No, I was gonna say I also found myself really liking like all of the side characters pretty much a lot more than maybe I thought that I would have originally. Like they grew on me really quickly, and I liked pretty much all of them like from the moment they were introduced, which I feel like can be kind of hard to do. And I'm really interested to see how the anime like handles the introduction of all these characters, because I feel like just the pacing of it and also all of the characters being portrayed by such like talented actors really helps to like make them feel so alive, and like you can connect to them right away from the moment that they appear on the screen.
100%.
And I feel like that is something that can be really advantageous in a live action as opposed to an anime, is like having an actual person that is like playing the character to look at is something that you can like identify with, and like the subtle features in their expression and the way that they move and the way that they carry themselves is like tells something about the character. Just the way that they like shift, or and when you two characters are talking to each other and they're acting in a certain way, I feel like that is a huge advantage, obviously, that live action does have over anime, because in the anime it's like there's the voice acting performance, which is one thing, but at the end of the day, the way that you're interpreting this character is a drawing on a screen, and you know you're not going to animate every single like minute facial feature detail as like, you know, someone, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I do. The actors, that was actually one thing that like go back to the question of like you know, is it as good as we expected, basically. Like I heard a lot about how the acting was bad or cheesy. I don't think it was at all. I think the acting was like, I think the source material is cheesy, but I feel like a lot of people who might be calling the actors, you know, corny or like stuff like that, I think that they just don't understand the difference between like a directing decision and a writing decision and like an acting decision. When you pay attention to the choices that the actors are making, it's clear that they thought about it a lot, and it's clear that they are really trying to portray like a part of themselves in it. Like it's they're so good that like it shows like a clear confusion if you're like criticizing, especially the main cast. Like the performances that really stood out to me personally were Sanji and Nami. Their actors were so fucking good, and they brought like a reality to what I imagine is like I haven't, obviously I don't know a lot about the actual characters, but I know a lot about like the tropes that they generally fall into, or the character archetypes that they fill in their team. And like the whole joke of Sanji like hitting on Nami and stuff like that, and like we talked about in the reactions, how the way that an English speaking actor on screen who's portraying this anime character does an anime trope of like, hey sweetheart, how's it go, like that whole thing, the guy like really being really flirty, like the way that anime characters like slapsticky are very like flirty and kind of pervy towards girls or whatever. Like that in like a sort of I guess Leorio didn't do it that much, like in a kind of Jiraiya-esque way, more tame than that, I imagine, but like that kind of thing, that like hearts in the eyes, like crazy, like tongue like flapping out, awooga type thing, like that type of shit, like doing that, like translating that and making it work on screen requires like a choice for the actor, and I imagine for the director as well. It was probably a conversation, but like to have him be a lot more like actually kind of suave, and maybe it's just the actor's charisma coming through, but still that's like an element to consider. All these things are like, I just love talking about adaptation and just like everything that goes into that, because there's so much magic that happens in that transfer, and in order to make it like from one medium to another, there's so much opportunity to make it work and to make right decisions, and there's so much opportunity for it to fail if you just waste all of the magic of the thing that you're of like the like what does it mean to transfer something that's like a 2D black and white image to a live action scene in a different country, in a different completely different cultural production. Like there's so much opportunity for clever acting and writing and directing choices, and I feel like they nailed it, especially in like the way that those tropes and those archetypes come through in the live action. And that's just the Sanji thing is just one example. Like Luffy looking all like deranged and crazy is like, how do you capture that like raw, adventurous, free spirit energy of an anime protagonist in a live action actor? And I think that they did an amazing job. They did a perfect job.
I think that like, yeah, talking about cheesy acting or whatever, it's when you have something like an anime, and this is the reason why a lot of, not the only reason, there's many reasons why most anime live action adaptations are garbage and no one wants to speak about them. But you know, one of the things is just that anime is kind of inherently like a cheesy thing. If you really break it down, there can be, you know, great moments and great scenes and awesome lines and cool deliveries and stuff like that. But when you make real people do those things, it just kind of seems a little bit silly a lot of the time. And there's no real way to fully escape that. And that's what I think that I really appreciate about this adaptation, is that they didn't try to make it like this is 100% cool and serious
and gritty
and yeah, we're like taking away all of the fun out of this, and we're doing like you know, you can't do a 1-to-1 literal translation from the anime to the live action because it would just be stupid. But I feel like they managed to capture a lot of aspects probably of One Piece, hopefully, I assume, but we haven't seen it yet, but also of just anime in general, like you were saying, with, you know, these different tropes that were able to be captured, you know, the screaming out of your move as you're punching someone. It's like, that's a stupid thing. That's always a stupid thing in anime. And just like a bad battle strategy. It's like you're sneaking up on someone and then you scream and then they turn towards you and then you punch them in the face or whatever. It's like, it's a silly thing, but to be able to do it in a way that the show is like acknowledging that it's silly, because some of the characters don't do that and are like, these guys are a bunch of absolute buffoons going around and naming all their attacks, but also having it be so cool in some moments. I feel like it is able to, that's like, that is being able to kind of capture the magic of the story and like make it into something new, but without losing what I feel are kind of like core elements of it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. They had a serious undertaking. Like for any, this adaptation proves to me that like anything's possible. Like if with the right choices and with the right directing, like if the team has passion, then like any adaptation is possible. Like I used to, like, people would always talk about like what's the best thing that they could make. It's always like Death Note was like the golden child of, you know, the possible Western live action adaptation. I still think it could be done well, but like so even Death Note like has so much stuff in it that's like so anime and so 2000s like cringe.
I will eat this potato chip. It's like
That's a really extreme example because
I
that's just
know.
a comedy scene, but like I'm talking about like the sort of like boy love yaoi fan servicey sort of like light looking cool, not in like a Sigma Ryan Gosling way, but in like a really gay way, like in a sort of musical theater way where he's like that whole like fruity sort of aspect to it that not it's not just like cops trying to catch a killer. It's like it's anime. There are things about it that are very anime, and
that's why it works as good as a musical. You can have Death Note the
that's
musical.
literally exactly
It's
why
apparently really popular
it
right
like
now.
popped off. And it's why the live action Netflix adaptation Death Note didn't work, is because they say whitewashing. I think that whitewashing applies like a social sort of bend to just bad choices. Like I don't think that they were trying to make it white because they thought that the Japanese stuff was bad or that like it being Japanese was bad. I think they were just trying to make it accessible to a Western audience, and that wasn't what was wrong with Death Note. What was wrong with Death Note was that they took that too far of trying to make it accessible and trying to make it interesting, and they didn't understand the core essence of what makes Death Note cool or fun or interesting, and what makes it a good series. And that's the difference between something like that and something like this, is that the people making it, I don't even know One Piece that well, but you can tell that they know why people like One Piece. Like, they know what is cool about it. It's not just about it being pirates or that it's anime or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just like with Death Note, it's like they thought what was cool about Death Note, and you can tell what they thought was cool about Death Note by what they showed and what they focused on was like just suspense and like a chase scene. There's like a couple chase scenes in the anime that were like really epic and cool, but like, or was really, they really thought was like, oh my god, people love this, is like all the people dying in crazy ways. They watched like the first 2 episodes of the anime where Light's like writing people's names down, and they're like jumping off buildings or like hanging themselves in their cells or just like choking on something and dying or having a heart attack here or there. So they, in the show or in the Death Note movie, they like showed people just, so much of it was like Final Destination of like he writes somebody's name down and then like a ladder comes and chops their head off or something, like literally. And like that's not what's cool about it. What's cool is like the power of that and how he uses that to affect change and what that does to him what that does to Light over time. But they didn't understand that that's what was cool about it, or that's what people enjoyed about the source material. So then it just missed the mark completely. With One Piece, it seems like they really understand like what makes it good, like what makes it interesting.
And they weren't just trying to be like, oh, we're going to make this so that only people who like One Piece will like it, and we're going to make it like very fan servicey or like make it inaccessible to new viewers in a certain way, you know, because I feel like that can sometimes happen where it's all kind of inside jokes or like they already have the main thing, so this is gonna be like just like you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do, but I think that I also disagree with you, because I think that they went more, they didn't compromise. They did a lot of fan service, and there's a lot that went over our head, and there's a lot that like we don't understand, and you could tell while watching, like there's little mentions of stuff that's like that doesn't mean anything to me, but it clearly means something to somebody out there. And I think that making it for One Piece fans is what allowed it to, like from the get-go, is what allowed it to maintain that authentic, true feeling. And then where it becomes accessible is not necessarily the planning stage, but is in like casting really good actors, and obviously apparently Oda was relatively involved with like sort of correcting minor things like as it goes along, like little course corrections of continuity or like influence and stuff like that. And he had a say in like the race of the cast, and like, you know, apparently I saw somebody say that like Oda at some point said that Luffy would be Brazilian and like Zoro would be Japanese, and then Nami would be like or Swedish, I think. and just like little things like that, and that feeling of core, and that core feeling of sticking with and making it for One Piece fans. Like, I feel like the other people will come because they came before. Like, they found the series and enjoyed it when it was just a manga, and it became a sensation worldwide when it was a manga. It's just about, making sure that transition happens in a way that's authentic. 'Cause it's already good on its own, and not in a way, clearly, like, just judging by the sales figures, it's good already, clearly not in a way that's so Japanese or so, because it's the most selling manga ever. I think maybe Attack on Titan's like the number one worldwide. It's the most selling in Japan. But so you don't need to make it so accessible that you lose that core, that you need to like find the balance between, for normal people and for anime fans or for One Piece fans. It's already, you just need to get it in front of everybody, and then enough people will like it, and making it, and that accessibility and that intrigue and that attachment will come from the scene with Nami like trying to cut the tattoo out of her arm and like stuff like that. And that was like, we even remarked on that scene specifically. You can tell that was like the most dramatic scene of the whole show, and as dramatic as and like hard hit, like cut really deep, and it felt the most, even just from an outside perspective, the most like authentic. Like, you could see, like I mentioned, like it feels like you're reading it off the manga panel, and like the whole like, of course I will, and how she's just saying Arlong over and over again, and then looks up at Luffy, and then she's just like, save me, and it's like, I can see the manga coming through so clearly in that moment, and that already, like, I could see that cutting just as deeply to people who know nothing about anime, nothing about One Piece, as it does. So again, it's like, you don't even need to consider that. It's just about doing it justice from the get-go and getting it in front of the right people. And that's what I think I love about it, is it has that strong foundation. And like I said at the beginning of this whole rant, it proves to me that nothing is impossible as far as adaptation. It just takes the passion, and it takes obviously the connections and the money and whatever. But if you have the passion from the get-go, and you stick to, and you understand what's good about it and what's important, then that will come through at the end of the day. And that's I love that.
Yeah. I one thing, like, I guess to kind of finish off this question that we've been talking about for 20 minutes now.
Not that long.
Is I think one thing that I didn't really expect was how many like character arcs and storylines were kind of all going to be going on at the same time during this like 8 episode thing. I know it covers like 40 episodes or whatever, but just to be able to, the fact that it like touched on such deep things for so many characters in such a short amount of time, I feel like was something that I really wasn't expecting with this show, Yeah. Like I didn't expect to get such like heartfelt moments and crazy backstories, and even like with Kobe, like how we got like an entire like separate side to the whole thing. And when in the first episode, when it's like, oh well, they're leaving, I bet we won't see him for a long time, and then we just instantly see him again, and we see him the entire time. Yeah. And what he's doing, I feel like that, like I wasn't expecting it to have that. I'm like that it would bother to do something like that, like show this character that could have been completely cut out after the first episode and then brought back later. The fact that they like show him on his journey and with Garp and like with all of these things, I feel like really felt like it broadened up the world a little bit. Yeah. And gave more insight into the Marines and how that all worked, instead of it just being like, oh, we're the pirates, and then these Marines are always coming after us, and they're kind of like this mysterious like force that like don't have any real faces in them, Yeah. And him and whatever bad haircut guy's name is, like that, like even that relationship and how it like changed and grew over time, and in the end they were kind of friends.
Yeah, I really like that. Apparently that's like a change from the manga anime,
really?
is that the Marines were not a big, like Kobe's story was a thing that comes back sort of later, and you follow this introductory period where you meet all the Straw Hats, and then once they're all together, then the Marines become like a thing, or become more of a presence in the story, and Garp gets introduced. That's why I guess the reveal for him happened like 300-400 episodes in, whatever it is because we set that up now, go on, meet everything, set the whole rest of the journey up, and then once we really get going in the plot, that's when the Marines kind of come in. And once if you think about it from a plotting way, it sort of makes sense that they would come out that organically, because like it's just how things kind of evolve. And then once you get like 300 episodes in, I'm sure they've done things that would warrant a greater bounty. But in terms of adapting it in a way that's like digestible and interesting over the course of 8 episodes, I kind of like that. I like the way that they did that. It feels kind of like the kind of change that is like cutting out the Black Swordsman arc from the start of the Berserk manga and just like starting all the anime adaptations. Like, I mean, 97 anime started with episode 1 being about all that stuff, but like so much about that early arc like spoils the real beginning of the story, because it's like a prologue to the prologue. But like it feels kind of like that, where just like, okay, the manga and everything was done this way because of the format that it was released in, or because everything kind of evolved organically. Now that we have the choice to reorder events or like recombine everything, it gives that sort of personal connection to Luffy's backstory, which a lot of people really like and want. And I feel like a lot of, especially like modern audiences, kind of feel like they need in order to get really invested in somebody.
I also think what I kind of like about it as well is it puts him on kind of a similar like level as all of the side characters. Like if you have the main character and then all of the side characters kind of get backstories and character growth, and like we've learned things about them, and then and I find a lot of times sometimes the main character gets left for last. Like they just kind of are like the embodiment of, you know, this personality or this type of person, and then it goes on and on and on and on and on, and then like 3/4 of the way through the story, then they get their big like emotional revelation where they like meet up with a family member or like learn their true backstory or whatever. So I feel like it's kind of interesting to like get that out of the way earlier, and then and it just kind of like puts the characters kind of all in the same place of like they've all like just gone through something, you know, like Sanji is just like left, like, you know, gone out into the world, and same with Usopp, and Nami has like just broken free of, you know, this like thing that she was like caught up in for years and years, and Zoro just like got his ass kicked and is like dealing with that, and like and then the fact that Luffy, you know, confronts his grandpa and then is kind of set free, and then it puts them all at like this new start, you know. I feel like to me as someone watching is kind of satisfying, because it makes it seem like they've all of this must have they must have really bonded, because all of them really went through something here.
Exactly.
Anyway, Astroplace asked, what in your opinion is the worst part of the show, whether it's thematic, character, set, design, etc., and what are you looking forward to most currently in the show? I guess maybe what we're looking forward to most in the anime to see. Yeah.
Do you have something?
I think for me, we talk so much about all the good elements in the show because there are so many, but I do think that for me, some of the costuming I think was definitely the weak point for me, because I think the sets were all really good. I think like all the acting was really good, and all like a lot of the designs were really good, but I think there was just, because of how much else was going on, I feel like there maybe was just not like that like extra little attention to detail that I think might have like taken it up a notch for me in terms of that.
I guess you have a better eye for me than that, than me for that. But to me, I just don't know how they would be improved, again, because it's an adaptation, and I don't want them to go like Pirates of the Caribbean.
No,
Like I don't know. What do you mean? How would you want them to? What do you mean by in what way could they be improved? And like, what about them is so bad? Like, because I think that they're if the complaint is that like they're flat and like sort of cheap looking, I think that it's hard again because it's an adaptation of a manga series and they're going for a very specific look. I don't think that like I just don't know how you could improve that by like making it more realistic and gritty or making it more colorful or more boisterous than it already is. I just don't know what could be done to make it better. Like
I guess what I think is there's nothing really wrong even with a lot of the pieces that they chose. I think the quality of a lot of them was really bad. Like we spent some time talking, I think in the first episode, about how just you like me watching, I can tell that this is like cheap material. This is like really something like a Halloween costume you would order
but
off
we
of
talked about
Amazon.
like just the sailor's outfit or the marine outfits, but like what else about like Arlong's outfit? All the makeup was really good for like the fishmen and stuff.
I think a lot of it came down to that it all looked very like it was like fresh off the rack, which I think
that's the point because it's an animated series. Again, like I think it's just hard to get on board with that for me because we praised it for not trying to be gritty and realistic looking.
I know. I guess I'm not saying that something has to look gritty to look realistic, like the shirt that you're wearing, or like it doesn't look like it looks like you've washed it a couple times and worn it a few times because you have, but it's I mean it still looks like a shirt. It's not destroyed. It's not ruined and ripped up and stuff. And also I do think that Luffy's hat was like one thing because they even specifically said, oh, your beat up, tattered up hat or whatever, but his hat was like pristine the entire time. And we did see Nami fixing it, but like before that they were like, oh, you're like destroyed. It was kind of frayed
on the end. It wasn't dirt. Again, it's like I don't think dirtying up the outfits would have made it. I don't think that would have aligned it more with the vision of that the show is going for. In other words, I think that the fact that everything looked so pristine and their clothes were so pristine, despite them fighting and like being all crazy all the time and being out at sea, I think it's a deliberate choice to make it look fresh and like it's off the rack and fresh out of the wash or just like brand new, because the series has like if you look about an anime character design, it's like everything's one color or a gradient possibly, or like lit in a certain way. It's a solid color, like a solid white uniform with not like frayed edges or like, inconsistencies or it being dirty. I don't think that it looked that way because they didn't put effort into it. It seemed like it looked that way because they wanted to emulate the designs of the anime and like the colors and the solid nature of everything. And like that aspect to the designs, I think, was a choice to keep in line with the vision and not make it look like a Disney show or something, or like another live action adaptation. They weren't trying to make it look like real life. They were trying to make it look like an anime. And I think that's what they accomplished with that. So I was on board with that when we saw the Marines uniforms at first, but then like as you see it with every character, and like if you look at Arlong's crew, they all had like frayed, shitty uniforms. They were all a bunch of pirates, and so it's not the same for every person, and it's not the same for every situation. The Marine uniforms look very clean because they're Marines. They're meant to, they fill a certain role in the story. So I don't even know if I agree with that anymore.
I do also think that at like in the first episode, and I'm not sure if it was like a pilot episode type thing where they, didn't have as much of a budget yet or something, because the costumes in the first episode were dramatically worse than like in the entire rest of the show. Like even the Marines outfits, like when you see Kobe and Helmeppo in the later episodes, like those are not the same uniforms that
I find that a difficult claim to make because we didn't really pay attention to them as much. We might have just got used to them, Or how sure are you that they were different outfits? Did you see the tags? Did you see that? Like, do you see the production list of all the uniforms they have? I just don't know. Like, I just think that like when we were first getting introduced to the show, I feel like that was a big thing, and it was like it seemed like oh, these look kind of cheap. But then as it goes along and as you see more of the characters and get more of a context for like the look of the world that it's going for, it seems like a choice and not like it's cheap. It just seems like it's looking fresh because they aren't trying to make it all gritty and realistic, like we said, is my thing. As far as a thing that I don't like, I'm struggling to remember. I'm not saying it's like a perfect show at all. But there's nothing that's, I don't know. I'm struggling to think. Do you remember me complaining about very much? Like, I don't know.
I mean, like, you can complain about the like 2 other black cat pirates.
Yeah, they
but,
were
like,
lame.
They were super lame, but it kind of like it wasn't trying to make them cool. Like it was like it seemed like
one thing that I definitely don't like, but again, it's like they're going for a certain vision, a certain aesthetic, is the fucking sword fighting. I don't like so Zoro is a dual wielder, and whenever there's a dual wielder in anything who uses 2 swords, they use 2 swords like it's 1 sword. They swing both swords down, when the whole point of having 2 swords is to guard with one and attack with one, or, you know, be able to guard with one, attack with one, and then switch to the guard and then use your offhand or whatever. There's techniques to it. And and the way that they like, and the only reason it matters, I think, is because that's the kind of thing where like you're switching from an anime manga to a live action thing. So you have the opportunity to do more with the choreography and be more crazy with it. Again, he's fighting people like Mihawk and shit who like, it's an anime manga adaptation. So I think it's also wrong for me to expect them to be like very historically accurate with their sword fighting techniques. But again, like when we were talking about like the opportunities that you have going with an adaptation, they had the opportunity to make him more skilled or show off more skill with the sword. Instead, it felt very dance-like and like they were just like swinging swords around and like being kind of crazy. And the reason that works in anime is because animation as a medium kind of accentuates movements in a way that you can't do in real life. Therefore, it's interesting to look at, and it's cool to see like anime characters fly around and do crazy sword fight maneuvers. But like, if you translate that to real life, all of the sword fights to me with Zoro, except for Mihawk, because there was that emotional element and because it was hyped up really well, it was a really cool like hyped up fight. I think that all, like the lowest point to me were all the Zoro fights. I think that like there were some shots that were cool, or some, you know, gimmicks with the camera work or the little choreography things, like, and the way that they incorporated the sets into each fight. I thought that was cool. But generally, it was just like Zoro's gonna win, and I'm not even looking at like cool Sakuga or like anything interesting. I'm looking at like, clearly they were choreographed to like, oh, jump and do a roll and land like this, or like when young Zoro's fighting Kuina, is that her name? And he like pulls out the swords and then he's like, and it's like, I'm sure that looks really cool in the anime when he's doing the crazy stance with his 2 swords, but seeing like a 17-year-old boy, skinny ass kid just go like with these swords, it's not cool. It means different things in real life. And it's also difficult line to walk because he like does the sword in his mouth thing. So it's like it's a really weird situation to be in. But I feel like they could have done his choreography a lot better to make it work. I think the best sword fight, or the best use of Zoro's swords as like an action set piece, was the first time we see it against Morgan, against Axe-Hand Morgan, where he like, I don't know, they're like fighting around and he's like blocking, and then like he does a spin move and then the sword in his mouth goes right up to his neck or something. And it's like, it was clearly choreographed. It's more of a dance than a fight, but like the movement worked in this really unconventional way, and they found a way to like make it land and make it seem like, oh, this is a practiced thing, you know, you know what I'm saying? Like it showcased like, skill.
Oh, like to me, it's like he puts a sword in his mouth. It's like, literally, what is the point of that? That's completely useless. Like, are his teeth made of iron? Like, what's he gonna do? And then it like winds up in that position, and you're like, oh, this is like the one move and like this perfect situation where the sword then lines up with like the guy's neck, and it makes so much sense. But then to me at least, having the 3 swords just seems kind of foolish.
It's a very extra anime
but
thing.
Then it comes down to at the end, then he only has 1 sword, and he's not. To me, I felt like by the end of the live action show, when he only has his 1 special good sword, he has kind of gotten rid of like the bullshit of the other 2 swords that were just like meaningless to him, and then instead he has like the 1 special one that he's not saving for a special occasion. He's just gonna like use it properly.
Yeah. The other thing was, I mentioned in episode 2, was this is actually the main problem that I have as a first time viewer of the One Piece live action. The difficulty they had communicating anime shit in live action and apparently it's a difficult thing. It's like it's not quite fully set in stone how like the water works against devil fruit users, like that. It's like doesn't have to be seawater as long as they're submerged, but then if they're splashed, then the line moves constantly. It seems like just a convenience for whenever Oda wants to weaken Luffy. Basically, it's like his kryptonite. And the rules, like, I'm sure me saying right now that the rules change will piss a bunch of One Piece fans off because they watch 50 reactors and they have a copy paste whenever this topic comes up, and I'm sure that they're pasting it right now in the comments. But and I'm sure like over the 1,000 episodes you've probably watched 1,000,000 times, like all of the different sequences where the water thing comes into play, and you have a coded way of understanding how this works. But I don't. And my point in talking about that here is that in the fight with Buggy, specifically in the fight with Arlong where Luffy got splashed, and like he fell in the water, obviously that's enough for me to understand that like that's going to weaken him. But like him getting splashed versus like it like throwing him off balance versus Buggy getting completely flooded with all of the shit from the water tank. And Buggy being mostly fine, like after he steps up for like 1 second, is there a mastery over that weakness that Buggy has being a devil fruit user for longer? It introduces so many questions of power scaling that I know don't matter to the random Netflix, like my mom who's going to watch this for the first time, not know anything about One Piece, not know anything about like anime power scaling or how power systems work. It's just that's one example of like them communicating. Like apparently the devil fruit users like they say their attacks and like the whole gum chop or gum fucking whatever or chop fruit or with Buggy. It's like that's how you know they have a devil fruit in the manga. And I didn't know that. And that was not communicated to me that like only like devil like it's supposed to be obvious. Like they say their attack of like gum kick or whatever the fuck it is, and everyone who doesn't say something like that doesn't have a devil fruit. I just thought that Luffy, because like Luffy says it and then Buggy says it, and then we see like 50 other really strong people, and none of them are saying shit. And I thought as a first time viewer like they're not revealing like who has a devil fruit power to be like mysterious and set up like a reveal or something. And maybe they are, but also like, I just don't know. Like there's questions, and they're questions that I'm asking, not because I think that the live action wanted to put those questions in my head, but because it's just kind of unclear. And like the thing that happened with Shanks, I think that was what happened with Shanks saving Luffy, I think it was supposed to be way more clear or mysterious in a different way. We don't know whether his thing is controlling beasts, whether it's super speed and like running on water. How did he get out there?
Or whether just the timing and framing of all of those things that we saw were.
Or am I supposed to be asking? Did he swim out there, or did he like teleport out there?
Are we asking these questions because they want us to ask the questions? Or are we asking these questions because
I think some of the questions
poor choice that was potentially
some
made?
of the questions were supposed to, or some of the things we're wondering, and I'm excited to find out by watching the anime. But like that type of shit, like how like what exactly am I supposed to be questioning? Like those type of things are like what are for the manga readers and the anime viewers who like know what's being set up or know what's being alluded to in those moments. Whereas if you're watching it from a first time thing, it's like intriguing, but I don't know what is like the question here. And I'm sure, again, it's like, I'm sure a bunch of people are gonna be like, fucking, you're so dumb. Obviously, like, he doesn't have it. Like, we saw a bunch of people saying like, or should I even say that? I shouldn't say that. I read some comments and I got a little bit spoiled, so I won't say that. But there's, people are like, oh, well, yeah, I don't know. It's just, there's no way for us to know anything without watching the anime, and we are going to watch the anime, so we'll figure it out. But that was my main thing. That was my main problem with the live action, was just how there's a lot of mystery and a lot of setup to a lot of things in One Piece, I know for sure, because it's all about exploration and adventure and learning new things and building out the world. And they made me ask a lot of questions I don't think they intended me to ask, and the questions that I'm supposed to be asking are muddled between a bunch of confusion about other shit that I think is supposed to be, they thought would probably be evident.
Mm-hmm. David Butt asked, which of the arcs are you most excited to see in animated form?
The Baratier arc, for sure, because I want to see how Mihawk gets introduced to the whole crew, because if Garp is not a thing really until later, then he didn't send Mihawk there, and this whole thing with Kobe talking to Garp and like saying Luffy is a fucking pirate, you're never going to change him, all of that leading up to Arlong's thing, the whole arc with Baratier sort of sets up the next arc with the way that like the Marines are sort of corrupt or whatever, and how that's interacting with all of this. And the fact that like the rat, the Nezumi, Captain Nezumi or whatever of the Marines, like how that interacted with Garp was like its own sort of little extra thing. And I'm guessing if Garp isn't as big of a presence at that point in the story, that he wasn't there, and that like there's so much that's filled in by Garp and Kobe and the Marines being in the background and like trying to get to Luffy, that like it fills in a lot of the motivation of different factions and like the interplay and interweaving of the world. And because people hype up the world building of One Piece so much, having that possibly separate, I think is going to, it might flatten the plot a lot, and I hope it doesn't. But, I'm interested to see how they keep everything interesting with this, like, that like political subplot being gone, and the whole motivation with Mihawk being introduced at that time because Garp sent him there.
Yeah,
apparently he wasn't sent there by Garp, possibly, or he was, and we don't figure that out. Yeah, and it's like,
then it's like, but I feel like part of knowing the why like kind of makes it more interesting, because the whole time of watching the show you're like, what is Garp's deal? Like he's like so hot and cold and so all over the place constantly. So, and I feel like that really adds like a huge element of the mystery, is like knowing who he is, and then being like, why is he doing what he's doing, essentially. But I think I would agree that I'd be most interested to see that one, because
and just I feel
like it also might be the most different, because I also feel like Sanji's character might be the most different. Also, to be able to see some of the Zoro sword fighting stuff in anime form, I feel like would really elevate it. So I feel like that is the arc where there is the most potential for difference and the most potential to like possibly lose things but also gain other things that could really take it to another level.
I think so too. That's probably,
and just to see like the portrayal of like, because like that's when Nami is like, leaving to go betray them or whatever. So I feel like it's kind of like a critical moment. I feel like the stuff before that and after that, obviously I'm still excited to see, but I feel like that is like, I'm most curious of like how all of that kind of works in the anime, and like with possible changes. Obviously we don't know like how different it's going to be or what things are going to be completely changed, but like we know that like stuff has not been revealed and like stuff doesn't work out exactly the way that it does. So it just kind of makes you think like what could possibly be different? The story just seems so cohesive and so well thought out that it's like to think like, oh, okay, well actually like these reveals didn't happen at these times. So what else
so
is
much,
going to be
yeah,
there?
so
much of it. It's
so
like
it's
so
like the
wrapped
conflict
together.
is gone. Is
Yeah.
like adding the Marines to all of those circumstances is it added literal conflict. These characters that were at cross purposes and like, you know, constantly working against the Straw Hats and like, you know, this literal conflict all the time. And without that, like, it's just going to be like I imagine it's going to be more like episodic adventure manga thing, like of just the driving force is not this conflict or this race or this, tension based storytelling. It's going to be very much like, let's explore, go
we're
out
over
there.
Here. Oh no, the Marines are like vaguely coming after us. Let's run away. Okay, we ran away. Now we don't know when they're gonna come next.
It seems like that added so much, and that as a first time viewer, it's gonna be really interesting to see what the story does otherwise to make it interesting. Because that part to me, like it really enhanced. It gave it such a different dimension to everything that was going on. That like without it, it feels like you're just like ripping the thing in half and then getting a smaller portion of it. So that's what I'm interested in, is like, how is the story going to feel without that other dimension? Is it going to feel flat? Is it going to be, you know, kind of boring or what up until a certain point? And not that that's like my favorite part of it or anything, or that, you know, the story's nothing without it. It's just that, again, it's that other dimension. It's that other sort of flavor and that other perspective. It fills out the gaps so much, and it gives it so much like dynamism, and it feels like there's just more to it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Are you looking at other questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just picking one.
Oh.
I was picking one, and then I got kind of like inspired to talk about something that I wanted to mention that's like not directly answering any of the questions. Which is one thing that I really liked about this, and probably about the anime as well, is that like Nami is such a strong character, and she has such like a great story at the beginning. One thing that I'm a little bit worried about over the next 1,000 episodes is kind of the classic, oh, there's the girl in the anime. Oh, she is like extra badass at the start. She is like extra competent. She's a little like one step ahead of some of the guys in like achieving her goal or whatever. And then sidelined, you know, and I really hope that doesn't happen, because like as a character, I really like her, and I really like the struggle that she faced, and you know, like how far she was willing to go to protect her town and all this stuff. I feel like that was really inspiring. But you know, I guess I'm like, that is one thing that I'm a little bit worried about.
Well, I can just tell you, I won't give anything away, but I can tell you should be ready for disappointment then, because the whole point of One Piece is that you are constantly meeting new people and seeing new struggles, and everybody kind of goes to the background. Like that's kind of the nature of a series that long, is that, like, you know, in order to keep things fresh, you need to add new characters. And I know that there's a bunch of other characters, like there's like hundreds of other stories that we're going to be seeing over the next episodes. So like, I guess I would normally be more disappointed if it was like Sakura. I'm not expecting, because the problem with Sakura, for example, and like for somebody who fills the same sort of role in the ensemble of the main cast as Nami does, is like the main female, smarter than like the other guys and like a little bit more capable. Is the problem with Sakura was that she kept being hyped up as something bigger than she was, or than something bigger than the place that she had to fill in the story. Is like, Kishimoto always wanted to make Sakura a bigger deal, and like kept hyping her up like she was going to do something good. And then just at every possible turn, it's just shut down, and not in a way that's like, oh, sometimes failure sucks and you need to find something new in life, but in a way of just like, they're still portraying her like she's a badass and like she's part of the group, but she hasn't done anything significant in like hundreds of episodes. And that's the problem with that is, again, that there's like this tight main cast of characters that's like 5 people or 4 people, and the story is like about their dynamic, kind of, or even less, more like 2 people, and this person's supposed to be in the middle, and it's like this very close relationship that you're following over the course of however many episodes. I think why One Piece won't have as much of a problem with sidelining the main cast, and obviously sidelining is a strong word. I know that she'll probably be around for most of it, and she'll give her input and like have little arguments and have little comedy scenes where she like argues with Sanji or something, but like they're not, the story isn't that streamlined to where it's about Nami and Luffy going off together and exploring everything. It's about the Straw Hat Pirate. It's Luffy and his crew exploring, and she's one of the crew, and she's not as pivotal of a character. I don't think. I actually don't know how pivotal she is. Maybe she's a bigger deal than I think, but I just know with the volume of characters that, and I don't know all of them. I know a few of them we haven't met yet. But with the volume of characters that are inevitably going to enter and leave the story, I don't expect a lot more from her or from any of the characters. Like as far as like big emotional revelations, I feel like the Arlong thing with her stabbing her arm and asking Luffy to help her, that was like her big character moment, and the rest of it is going to be like their relationship is established. How do they solve problems together? I don't think that there's going to be another thing where she has another family that's like getting killed by pirates or something like that. She has this other big character arc. I feel like that's her arc. And now that she has her family, you know, how do they all interact together? And the focus will be away from her probably most of the time, and just from all of them most of the time, and more on like the next person they meet and whoever that is. So I would be as disappointed as you, but I know that that's not the point.
I guess I was saying not. I guess what I was trying to say wasn't that like I hope she keeps having all these like crazy moments. I guess that I would just like to see her. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. That like.
You like Nami and you want to see more of her.
Yeah, I would see more of her. I guess in any capacity, really. Like not that she has to be like having her own thing, but like, you know, everyone was like kind of supporting her in there. I guess I'd like to see her like supporting like other people when they like have their, you know, big revelation or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Right.
Redding Tier asked us to rate the arcs from worst to best, like the intro versus Buggy episode, Kuro, Barate, and Arlong. Do you have a favorite?
Buggy was my least favorite. Then episode 2, then episode 1, from worst to best. The best was Barate. Let's start from the top. Best was Barate. Second best was the Arlong stuff, and then I guess the Black Cats, just because I really liked Kaya. And Usopp and their relationship. I feel like their
relationship was so strong.
And then the episode 1 where they break in and steal the safe, and then episode 2 is probably the worst for me, personally.
I think I would agree with that. I think that the Buggy stuff, like, I like the aesthetic of it, but
I liked Buggy more when we saw him again. And I feel like he's going to be kind of like, my prediction is he's going to be kind of like a Hisoka figure, because he has that jester,
recurring clown dude who comes in. Sometimes he helps, sometimes he hurts them, sometimes he's just like causing chaos.
Yeah, I feel like him being at Arlong Park was not like the last we'll see of him. I feel like he's going to be recurring, like every arc or 2. He'll like come back in like a pivotal moment and just like fuck with them or something, or help them out of a bind. Or they'll like get thrown in jails on like a new island or something, and then he'll just be in there or some shit like that. And I'm excited more for that. What's interesting is that like it's such a hard thing to like square early manga setup to like the rest of the story. That's something that we ran into a lot for me rewatching Naruto and us like analyzing Naruto and like how everything kind of organically came up. If you talk about like Konoha Crush and the whole thing with like Kabuto's backstory and what Orochimaru's whole relationship to the village is, and then compare that to like what we learn through backstory and like this revisionist retcon history that we learned later on in the series, it's just fucked. It just becomes fucked because the meaning of everything is different. Its relevancy to the plot, it becomes different. And I feel like something like that is similarly going to happen with Buggy, because with Buggy, he's like, the first thing we hear from him is he's talking about his all these people. He destroyed their town, probably killed some of them, and he says this line that's like, I let them keep their hands, implying that he cut people's hands off when he did this in other places.
And then he realized that they couldn't clap for him.
Terrible person. A terrible person. Like, the implication of what they're saying that he has done in the past, and then 200 episodes in, we're supposed to like him when he like saves us from a prison break scene or something because it's all good old Buggy. It just feels it's the Orochimaru problem of just like this. It's not just he killed people in service of his dream. It's that he is cruel and fucked up. And how are you portraying it like this? Because the thing about Hunter x Hunter, when they have Hisoka, who is a terrible fucking person and who has done terrible, manipulative, psychologically cruel things, is that Hunter x Hunter as a series is not taking a moral stance, is not saying that anything is good or bad necessarily. It's posing questions, giving different perspectives. As a series, it's not like the justice is good and, you know, friendship is good and like follow your dreams. Like it's more complicated morally than that. So then when you get these evil fucking guys, you're not supposed to think that you don't have to like have this moral conversation with yourself to justify that. But if you question Buggy, for example, at all, then like it becomes very difficult to like him in comparison to the rest of the people. You know?
Yeah, I also think that like something that, you know, hints that he's going to be sticking around for like a long time is also that he mentioned that he knew Shanks,
yes.
right? And then he felt betrayed by him. So it like adding that like extra like layer of personal like relationship kind of one step removed from Luffy like adds in that like extra thing for him to like keep coming back and like potentially sort that out later down the line, or he'll meet with Shanks again and like then like something else will happen, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and we don't know Buggy's gonna come back, but it seems like that kind of character, and it's happened once already.
At the end, like there was a scene at the end that was with
Alvida.
Yeah. That was kind of like, oh, we'll get him next time, boys.
I just, you don't know exactly what's gonna happen, but like that, what I'm getting at is not that I'm not able to like Buggy because I'm some moral Puritan who just like gets all my morals from anime, and I'm unable to like complicated characters or like forgive or just like be involved in what's currently happening because of all this other shit. I'm just pointing out like this similar thing is happening with this show from what I can see just based on analysis like it's some deep thing, but like just based on sort of reading into a little bit, there's that similar thing of like I'm not sure Oda knew what they were going to do with Buggy or with this character or that character or what all of this stuff was going to mean exactly. They probably had an idea of making them come back or whatever, but when these series evolve like organically, and you leaving things open-ended is good for that because then you can bring things back. But like having something like, oh well, I let them keep their hands, and then I imagine later down the line they'll be like kind of buddy cop, like, oh well, truce for now type thing, when Luffy is not the most like just person ever. He's not above, letting your ship burn to the ground if you attack him, or like, letting you just succumb to your own devices. Punching off
the side of the boat into like
he's not against violence. He's
waters.
Not against his own sort of righteous form of cruelty if he feels like it's justified. But it needs to be justified, and I don't know if the series is interested in having these moral questions about like working with somebody like Buggy. Maybe it will surprise me and it will have these moral quandaries of like working with the bad guy to defeat a bigger bad guy, or if it'll explore any interesting way in that. But I feel like it's going to be more like, oh, the fans love Buggy. He rated well on our character poll, and he's like 9th most favorite character in the show or in the manga or something. Shonen Jump sends out all these surveys that, determine people's likability, and then the editors sort of tilt the story in a direction. That's why Kakashi was such a huge deal in Naruto Part 1 and onwards, because people liked Kakashi, people that wrote in these surveys, and I feel like maybe there's something to do with Buggy there, and I just don't know. It's kind of a rant on just like the development of these stories, but it's not that important, I guess. It's just what I'm thinking about.
Mm-hmm. I do have I guess 2 last questions from I don't know how to say this person's name.
Well, you got to say it.
Yeah. Yosu-sama. Yes, a lot of questions, but some of them we've kind of already answered, and were similar to other stuff. He says, drawing from the information and subtle hints about the world gleaned from the live-action series, what are your prognostications regarding future developments in the narrative? And furthermore, where do you envision each of the introduced characters headed in the grand scheme of the story? So I guess like where do you think like the story is going for here, and where do you think?
I feel like I've answered that too personally. Yeah. Do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I guess I think like one thing that I'm really interested to see is kind of what we've talked about of like if like the whole GARP thing doesn't come up till like 300 episodes later, is I guess the show has really surprised me with like the amount of depth that it goes into in each of these arcs. And like even 40 episodes, like the amount that happened, I felt like was even a lot for that length of time in a show this old. Like I think about like 40 episodes into Naruto, they didn't go through like this many deep character arcs and stuff. So I had originally thought of One Piece as like, I guess sort of lighter or enemy of the week kind of deal sometimes, and that if I hadn't watched that would have been my impression, that would have been my expectation. But I think now, after seeing the live action and seeing how like sort of fleshed out the characters are, and like each of the arcs kind of like has its own theme and its own idea and its own kind of vibe to it, I feel like it makes me really interested to see like where we're gonna go from here, and as they go to the Grand Line, what are they gonna encounter and experience, and like is it gonna be on the same level as this? Are we gonna like meet random characters that are just as compelling and interesting as Kaya along the way, or Usopp, or anyone, and like not everyone has to like join them, but like I guess I'm just really curious to see like when things are going to come up again. Like Zoro obviously like failed in his goal of fighting the best swordsman. So what is he gonna? I'm interested to see like what's he gonna do to train for that. Is he gonna reevaluate his style, and he's not gonna go back to using 3 swords, and he's gonna train with the one and like decide to be more powerful that way? Is he gonna leave and go somewhere and like train with other people? Is he gonna revisit his like his old play? Like I don't know what he's gonna do, but I'm interested to see like how that works into the story, and like if it's gonna be in like 800 episodes he's gonna have some development on that, or if it's gonna be now because it's soon after his big defeat. And same with some of these other people. Like Luffy obviously has like this very like long goal, and then we have someone like Usopp who just wanted like an adventure basically, and same with Sanji, who he wants to what was his thing called?
The All Blue.
Where
the 4 oceans meet, mm-hmm. and there's fish and crazy ingredients, and it's all like kind of
everything is all there.
Yeah.
So I feel like watching the live action, honestly, I don't know. The thing is like I feel like I can't really predict anything like too concrete, but I'm excited for it because of what I've seen was so much more than what I had anticipated.
Yeah.
And it makes me excited and have faith in the show. Like someone capable of like writing this, like kept going. And I know like later on the anime adaptation wise, slows
rough,
things
yeah.
down and it gets rough. But I haven't heard that that's the case for like the actual story of what's going on and like the characters and their journeys and the people that they're meeting and the places that they're going. So I feel like, honestly, watching the live action and being able to consume 40 episodes worth,
A very distilled version.
of it, honestly gives me a lot more faith in the anime. Because, when we started watching Naruto, I didn't have a lot of faith in it at the beginning. And that was obviously because we were new to the channel and I wasn't used to trying to watch a show that I like wasn't super huge fan of with a camera like 2 feet in front of my face, and having to like talk about it and stuff. But I feel like, if you were able to watch like an 8-episode live action Naruto that was like crazy good quality, then you'd be like, oh, I'm going to like appreciate this more and like have faith in it and like give it a break when it needs it and just enjoy it, and kind of trust the process because you already have that assurance.
Yeah.
And you don't feel like you're like testing the waters and like trying to like see
Which is
whether
funny
because
that's what the Land of Waves arc was supposed to be. It could have been less than half as long, but like that like that's what it need. That's what that story needed, and that's what we got with this live action was this like this initial sort of pitch of the story and that assurance that things will be better, and that's what I'm excited for too now. Like to end it off like that feeling of it being open-ended and it feeling like that it's written to be that it's not written like I kind of like the idea that it's not written to be barreling towards an ending. I think we mentioned this early in the reactions, but like I just am excited to be watching a series that everybody knows is good, that I can trust is good, and that I don't need to be worried about like, is it going to like finish strong or is it going to like maintain quality, knowing that the quality dips significantly at some point and kind of roller coasters throughout, understanding that going in, being ready for, like you said, to give it that space and give it that time where it needs it. Like, just I feel very primed to get into the main series,
Which is honestly the opposite. I was when we were debating, okay, should we just start One Piece or should we watch the live action because it just came out? It was kind of like I was very reluctant to watch the live action because I had thought if this is bad and I don't get a good impression from this, then it might change the way that I approach the anime. And I don't want that when I'm committing to watch something for 1,000 episodes. I don't want to be going into it like, well, I already kind of didn't like it. I hope that it makes me like it. I'd rather be like, I'm already so excited about this and I already love these characters and I'm excited to see what they do different.
That's exactly how we described feeling over the last like couple of years when people would constantly ask us to watch One Piece, like during live streams and stuff. You can go back and hear us whenever somebody would bring it up ever since we finished Naruto or before that even. But when we were finishing Naruto, people would ask like, oh, were you going to do One Piece next? And we'd always just be like, it's not like, I don't know if we're going to like just this, another shonen, another long thing, episodes here and there. And then we have these big black stories and then we have the big arc and then we have another big arc and then the big guy gets introduced and we fight him and we lose. And then we come back and we get a small victory and get out. And then there's a time skip and then we have these arcs and there's big crazy revelations about the world. And it just never ends and we just keep going and there's more backstory and more exposition and more things to learn. It's like, when does it end? But like, that fear all comes from not having the right expectations or not being in the right mindset. And I think we really are. And I feel like we wouldn't be, that's where we would be mentally going into this if we didn't have the live action. And that's coming from, anime fans, people who are already sort of accustomed to this style of storytelling that we're kind of getting into. We have experience with this type of thing and we were already kind of reluctant. And this really put us on the right track.
I think I like it a lot as a way to get people into the show because as people who review anime, we get recommendations day in, day out. It never stops with people recommending stuff. And a lot of the people who recommend things don't take into account anything about us or our tastes or what we may or may not like. So it can be really difficult to determine whether or not something will be for us and whether or not we will enjoy it. So, and especially when the show's so long, it's like, well, we don't want to start it and then realize we don't get 40 episodes and then be like, oh, that's no good. So,
and I feel like this, speaking from the reaction standpoint, I feel like this works so good as an introduction to a reaction series because you get to see the people that you're going, that, you know, hopefully if you like, whether you're going to like them for 1,000 episodes or whether you're like, if you see us enjoy the live action and us talk about the live action as a reaction viewer, like if we went into One Piece with the mindset just fresh, like how we like kind of skeptical, and then we have, you know, a lot of criticism loaded about like the animation or the pacing or like how the style and like all these kind of cookie cutter expectable things, and like if it doesn't hit, if we don't get invested in the characters when you wanted us to as a viewer, or it's taking too long for things to come out, for reactions to come out, and you're not even sure if we like it really or if we're as invested as you want us to be, then like, you know, you might not stick with it. You might just go watch another reactor. But like watching, I feel confident getting into a reaction series of this long after really loving the series, because I'm really proud of the videos that are going to be going out, and that I'm confident that our engagement and our involvement in the series will come through at this early juncture. And then people who are just finding our channel can watch our reaction to the live action and be like, oh, these guys like really get One Piece. They're on board. You know what I mean? Like they get it. I can see them being impacted by the things that I was impacted by when I watched it for the first time. Whereas otherwise, if they watched our hypothetical other reaction series to One Piece, where we just started kind of pessimistic, and for the first 40 episodes, we just kind of shat on it a little bit here and there, and we're just kind of passively watching it and getting into it over the course of more than a month worth of videos, like, people would be more likely to leave. And why wouldn't they? Because that initial kickstart would have to be faked, or, you know, because, you know, who's expecting people to, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel very confident getting into it, knowing that I enjoy it and knowing that I'm on board and I'm primed in the right way. And I feel like I wouldn't be that way if it wasn't for the live action. And I'm really excited to see where things go. Mm-hmm. There's another question.
Just one last thing to top it off, because we talked about this a lot during the show, but we haven't talked about it at all today. This is from the same person that asked the last question. It's about the soundtrack, and they said it's worth noting that Luffy's theme in the live action series is the exact inverse of Roger's theme, which is a really cool, like, songwriting choice that's really, really smart. And they asked, what are your thoughts on the musical accompaniment in the live action adaptation?
My thoughts are that it was good, but again, the music, stuff like that, we wouldn't know that. And because we haven't been listening to the arrangement in a different way for 1,000 episodes. I feel like that's the exact kind of thing that you would pick up on, or that would be significant to you if you were already a viewer of One Piece and you had heard Luffy's theme hundreds of times, voice crack, hundreds of times, like how we talk about in Naruto, they reuse the same fucking songs. I feel like you get that, and you get the sort of emotion from that when you know it. We don't know it. Speaking as a first-time viewer, the composition was really good. It really got me invested. It really synced up with my emotions and like elevated the experience, and it really helped. And it was really good sounding, and it was really resonant. It felt like it fit, and was very good. But like all of the nuance and all of the intrigue related to that, I obviously can't talk about. So
I think that the music, I think, really elevated the show. I think that a lot of times a soundtrack can, not necessarily in a huge way, but I think that it can kind of make or break a show if you have songs that like aren't quite in the vibe, or like you just have like the music just doesn't quite fit. I feel like can really affect someone's enjoyment, even if they're not paying attention to like, oh, it's the soundtrack that is like ruining this moment for me. I feel like every time that I noticed the soundtrack in this, it was like, yes, this is like taking it to the next level. I love this so much. Oh, the music like swelling right here is like so good. You know, I felt like I really liked it, and I kept noticing it in like a positive way throughout the show.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
You wanna do the outro or?
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening to our discussion podcast for the live action one. We're gonna do another one for like all the arcs in the anime probably, and then once we kind of have caught up to like whatever episode 40 or 40 whatever, that like the same amount of stuff has been covered, we're gonna do like a podcast specifically on the comparison between the two, just to be able to explore it further from like the other side. And if you want to be featured in the next one, you can check out our Patreon, where we will be posting posts to ask questions about all the different arcs. And yeah, please leave a like if you like this video. That would really help. And leave a comment down below. That would also really help.
And if you want to see anime reactions, you could wait on our YouTube channel and subscribe to the BOLDcast One Piece experience. Or you could check out our Patreon right now and get like, I think we're going to be doing 2 weeks ahead on One Piece. We don't want to do more than that. Usually we do a month. But then we found with Hunter x Hunter, once we were like more like a month or two ahead on Hunter x Hunter, and people like binged all of our reactions and then just like left because they kind of got full on BOLDcast content. So we're gonna be sticking with 2 weeks ahead, which will be 14 episodes roughly speaking. So I don't know. For uncut reactions, yeah. And then for edits will be a week. So it'll be a $5 tier, get a week ahead, and $10 tier to get 2 weeks ahead of uncuts. So you can decide which is more attractive to you. But yeah, you can check that out right now. The anime episode should be there at this very moment. So other than that,
bye-bye.